above the landing site at about 50,000 feet and staged that ascent, fired the ascent engine, and completed the rendezvous just as Apollo 11, Apollo 12, and all the subsequent flights to the moon would have to do.
Before the program was over, Cernan and Command Module pilot John Young would get a second chance to visit the moon. The trial run of Apollo 10 was considered a success. There were a few minor problems, including one during the staging maneuver, when Snoopy's ascent engine was fired prior to docking with Charlie Brown. During Apollo 11, this procedure would be done on the moon, and the descent stage would be left on the surface, not drifting in space. As Snoopy started the maneuver, it suddenly began spinning wildly. Stafford and Cernan regained control in a matter of minutes, and the problem was traced to a switch for the abort guidance system that had been left in the wrong position. These and other problems would be ironed out for the next flight. It could have been anyone instead of Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins. The crew assignment process had been set up so that any astronaut could fly any mission. Had something gone wrong on the two shakedown cruises flown during the first half of 1969, Apollo 11 would not have reached the moon.
It feels good. T-minus 25 seconds. 20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
Four days later, the lunar module Eagle, carrying Armstrong and Aldrin, separated from the command module Columbia and began its journey to the surface.
Then we started our final descent, and I think in many ways that was the most complex part of the flight from our standpoint. Now, there were other complicated parts of the flight, but they had been demonstrated by other crews on previous flights. This was the first time we were getting to do something that had not been previously tested, and so it was the time for us to put our very best efforts into getting a successful conclusion.
There were problems crossing those last few miles, however. At various times during the descent, alarms sounded aboard Eagle, signaling a computer overload. Mission Control correctly predicted that the problem did not affect the landing radar and told the astronauts to proceed. Then, at less than 2,000 feet, the two astronauts realized Eagle's autopilot would deposit them in a rock-covered area surrounding a crater. At 300 feet, as Aldrin calmly continued to relay descent information, Armstrong took manual control of the lunar module, which had only 30 seconds of fuel remaining.
Great shadow. 4 forward, drift into the right a little. 30 seconds. Forward, drift. Contact light. Okay, engine stop. We copy you down, Eagle. Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
We were around 30, 40 feet looking for that smoother spot, and then once we started settling on through, even though 30 seconds of fuel remaining had been called out by Mission Control, I felt quite confident that Neil's expertise would get us on the ground, and sure enough it did.
6.5 hours later, Armstrong left Eagle. He had prepared a speech only a few hours earlier. Like Armstrong himself, it was brief and concise.
I'm going to step off the limb. It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
The moon was a world of black and white and gray. The surface was even more compact than had been theorized. It was covered in a fine, powdery soil, much the same consistency as charcoal ash or talcum powder. Armstrong's boots sunk less than an inch into the dust.
Oh, that looks beautiful from here, Neil. It has a stark beauty all its own. It's like much of the high desert of the United States. It's different, but it's very pretty out here.
A half hour later, Aldrin joined Armstrong. They then spoke to each other almost matter-of-factly, but during the exchange, Aldrin softly summed up his impression of the moon.
Beautiful view. Isn't that something? Magnificent sight out here. Magnificent desolation.
Meanwhile, Mike Collins quietly orbited the moon in the command module. He was the most isolated person in history, but it was a peaceful loneliness. It has been a source of frustration to him that in the years following Apollo 11, he has been constantly asked if he felt cheated, left alone in the command module.
You know, I can't tell the truth about that because no one believes me, but I was just very happy to be where I was, to have the seat that I had. At that time, I think there were, I don't know, 30-some people in the astronaut office that were all clawing and scratching to get to be on the first crew, I kind of felt, and there I was on it, admittedly not with the best seat of the three, but the seat I had then and now suited me just fine.
On the surface, there was work to do. The astronauts had little more than 2 hours to complete their tasks, which included deploying several pieces of scientific equipment, erecting an American flag, and collecting 48.5 pounds of soil and rock. Within the soil was a new mineral, which would gain the official title Armalcolite, the first syllable of each of the three astronauts' last names. Less than 24 hours after landing, the ascent stage of Eagle rose from the moon.
Tranquility Base, Houston. Guidance recommendation is pings, and you're cleared for takeoff. Roger, understand. We're number one on the runway. 7, 6, 5, work stage, engine arm ascent. Beautiful. Very smooth. Very quiet ride.
After Armstrong and Aldrin had safely returned to the confines of Columbia, the three astronauts took a moment to sum up their accomplishments and to thank those who had made it possible.
We feel that this stands as a symbol of the insatiable curiosity of all mankind to explore the unknown. All you see is the three of us, but beneath the surface are thousands and thousands of others. And to those people, tonight we give a special thank you. And to all the other people that are listening and watching tonight, God bless you. Good night from Apollo 11.
On a plaque attached to Eagle's descent stage, forever left behind on the surface, contained the inscription, "Here men from the planet Earth first set foot upon the moon, July 1969 AD. We came in peace for all mankind." Greetings from the leaders of 73 nations etched onto a small silicon disc also remained.
Apollo 11, this is Hornet, over. Apollo 11, this is Apollo 11, reading you loud and clear. Our position 1330, 6915.
The United States had won the space race for the benefit of all the Earth. Kennedy's promise had been fulfilled. Sadly, Kennedy never had the chance to see the fruits of his dreams. Gone too were several American and Soviet spacemen, including Yuri Gagarin, who had perished 16 months earlier in a jet accident during a training mission. Armstrong and Aldrin had placed Soviet medals and an Apollo 1 patch on the moon in honor of these pioneers. The men who changed the way we looked at the universe also changed the way we looked at them. They will always be the men who got there first. None ever flew in space again. Buzz Aldrin returned to military service in 1971. Neil Armstrong resigned from NASA to assume a professorship at the University of Cincinnati. Michael Collins was instrumental in the construction of the National Air and Space Museum and became its first director.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.